What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Rock Fantasy Files, and welcome back to finally another edition of Rank and File on the Rock Fantasy Files. Been a minute. We've all been busy with Halloween and stuff, and all kinds of shit going on. Metalheads are always busy this time of year because we're always going to see horror movies and going to cool shows and shit. But here's a very special episode that we've been wanting to do for a little bit. We're doing a rank and file death, finally. So we are going to go around twice. Death only have 7 albums, so we're gonna go from 7 to 4, and then we're gonna circle back and do our top three. I am very excited to have Miles back on the rank and file episode here. We got Ovi, our fucking brother from Norway, and Count Ralphus joining us. Always awesome to have Count Ralphus here, our vampire historian from upstate New York. And yeah, this is going to be a cool episode, man. I'm fucking stoked for this. Stoked to get to talking about death. So we're going to start with 7 through 4. And I am going to let Ovi go first. How about that?
All right. Throw me into the fire. I shall not burn. Yes. So I will start with my number 7, and well, it should basically just be 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, but we can't. So I'm going to put individual thought patterns at number 7. The reason why is it's just a very slick sounding album. It's so produced, and I feel like different from the rest of the album. It doesn't have the creativity of the rest of the album. It's like the songs don't separate themselves as well as the rest of the catalog. That's why it's on the number 7. It's when I reached the last 4, so it just felt natural to put it there. But I like Out of Touch, Mental and Mind, and Trapped in the Corner. Trapped in the Corner, I think, is the best one. I know the most like the philosopher best, but I think Trapped in the Corner is just because it stands out in the album. I think, and it's not as commercial as the philosopher. Um, my number 6 is gonna be The Sound of Perseverance. It's kind of ironic because it's the album that Chuck didn't really want to do. He just had to do it to fulfill his contract. But it's a really great album, I think, too. Well, all of them are. To forgive is to suffer is a really good one. A Moment of Clarity, but I like the best one is Bite the Pain.
Yeah.
And number 5, I'm gonna pitch Ralph off to no end. He's gonna be Scream while Igor. The reason is that uh, I just like the other albums better, I guess, because it's the progress can be the production, it can be a lot of different things, but it's the album I got. I didn't get it until into a few albums, so it's no particular reason why it's here. But I like Evil Dead, Regurgitated Guts, and Denial of Life is my favorite from that one. My number 4 is gonna be Spiritual Healing. It was such a big step from spiritual healing from leprosy. It's like they went from being really underground and really evil to like spiritual healing. It changed the toll of the lyrics. It became like society became a lot more less death orientated in a way that we are used to. But that doesn't mean it's a bad album. He got James Murphy on the guitar. I like Altering the Future, Defensive Personalities, but Within the Mind, I think is the best one from there. So that's my 7 to 4, quick and easy, or quick and
Great.
hard. Depends on how you look at it.
Awesome. Miles, welcome back to the Rock Fantasy Files.
Yeah,
I'm a poet and I didn't know it.
Yeah, it's good to be back, and y'all picked a doozy for this one because Death is one of those bands that is very hard for me to rank. Actually, when I was doing my YouTube channel, I actually ranked this band, but some albums have stayed the same, but some of them have changed up a little bit from when I did that a couple years ago. Um, I don't like I'm sure like everybody on here, I don't hate any of these records. I love all of them. I love every period of Death. I love like the technical stuff. I love all of that stuff. But some of them I just reach for a little bit lower than the others, and coming in at the last spot, I don't think I had it this low when I ranked it before, but it's a Sound of Perseverance. I don't hate this record. I know some people kind of get turned off because, this is the contract one that he did with Nuclear Blast, so he can do Control Denied. If you watch the documentary Death by Metal, they pretty much go in and say like this. A lot of these songs were Control Denied songs. Chuck did the high vocals on here, which I actually do like. I don't hate his vocal approach on this record. Just for me, some of these songs last a little bit longer than they need to be, in my opinion. But like you have killer stuff like Spirit Crusher is great. You have Flesh and the Power It Holds, which is my favorite song off this record. That song is great. And then you got the cover of Painkiller on here, which it's a cover, but I think I still think it's a good cover. So yeah, it's it might not be like it's the contract album, but it's still a damn good album. All the musicianship, Richard Christie on drums is amazing.
Woo!
Yeah, just Shannon Ham on guitars on this one. Just great. It's a good record, but it's one that I kind of reach for a little bit, not as much as the others. So, yep. Next, I'm gonna go Spiritual Healing. Spiritual Healing is a record that I like. When I first heard it, I didn't like it as much. I thought it was the weakest Death record. I liked it, but I thought it was the weakest. Um, Over the years, I kind of found more appreciation for it. Though, like you can start seeing like kind of like the technical stuff that's kind of it's not full on technical, I'm gonna say that, but you can see like that stuff starting to creep in. The lyrics are not like zombies and gore. It's more like, you got living monstrosity. The song title sounds, like a crazy zombie song title, but it's really not. It's about like drugs and addiction and just all that stuff. I I love the title track on this record. It's great. I always thought the album cover was great. Everybody on here, Richard Murphy's on. I mean, James Murphy's on here. I'm sorry, is on here. Great musicianship. Just sometimes I feel like the songs I just don't get connected to the songs as much. They don't grab me, some of them on there, but that's that's just how I feel about it. So Spiritual Healing.
I can just jump in quick. Living Monstrosity is about pregnant women using drugs while they are
That
pregnant.
yeah, and that's when a lot of people bring up like when Chuck started like cussing on this record, he said like she's a stupid bitch and shit like
Yes.
that. Like he brought that up. Like I see people bring that up, but when I get into Scream Bloody Gore, we're gonna get into it. But next we got Human. This is where Death is going technical, and this is where you get the Cynic guys coming in here, and they're putting their jazz fusion more in here. I like this record. I think it's great. You got Cosmic Planet, Lack of Comprehension, Suicide Machine, flattening like a flatten of emotions on here. I just think that there's better technical Death records than this one. Well, two other ones that are better than this one, but I do love this record a lot, but I gotta put it somewhere, so it's going here. And what we at, number 4 right here.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the fan favorite, Symbolic. I didn't really notice. I think this vinyl's kind of hard to find now.
Mhm.
This is the
Yeah.
Metal Blade one, the white one.
It's
But
really hard.
yeah, but anyway, I like this record, but I catch hell when I say this. I see a lot of people put this record on a pedestal. This is the golden child. For me, I like it. I'm not say I like it. I love it, but it's a tad bit overrated in my opinion. That's just my opinion, but I can see why people like it. You got Symbolic, Zero Tolerance. I mean, you got Crystal Mountain. You got, Empty Words. It's got all the great songs on it. I just don't connect and love this album as much as some people do, but it is a damn good album. And, it's the fan favorite. I see a lot of people love this record. So, yep, Symbolic.
There you go. Count Ralphus.
All right, so yeah, it sucks putting one of these at the end. I love every Death album. Every album has a different production, and he just does so much different stuff on each one. They really do sound different, but they kind of go in like little sections where they kind of sound together, two of them, and then the next two sound different. Anyway, picking my number 7, I'm wearing the shirt. It's a vintage long sleeve for when I seen them on this tour. They played right in Middletown with
That's
Nevermore
worth a
opening
lot
up.
of money. The
Yeah,
shirt is worth a
it's-
lot of money.
I pulled it out of retirement just for tonight, and it's like a perfect print on it. It's like no holes or nothing. It's really good print on this. But so yeah, it's I hate putting it last, but it's like I started off with Death right in the very beginning, and this is like the progression that's been leading up all this time, and it just gets further from what I grew up loving. But I do love every album that they do, and I mean the title track's amazing. Empty Words, Misanthrope, Crystal Mountain, Perennial Quest, 1000 Eyes. um Gene Hoglan's drums are fucking amazing. But yeah, you got to put one last, and I guess that's the one. And it's one of those things like you could listen to it all again next week and switch them up again, like so. My number 6 now, I'm gonna go with Individual Thought Patterns, which I got on vinyl. Oh, and of course I've had Symbolic on CD. I didn't have the vinyl of that, but I got Individual on vinyl and CD. But
Nice.
so another really awesome album. Gene Hoglan again, but with Steve DiGiorgio, he's one of my favorite bass players. The guy's fucking amazing. He could play like the slow, doomy death metal kind of stuff, and he could do traditional metal. He's amazing at keeping up and doing every note that the guitars are doing, kind of bass player. He could do anything, this guy. He's fucking great. One of the best out there. The Philosopher, we had the video back in the day, which was great. Overactive Imagination, Jealousy. This got some really insane bass parts on that one. And Nothing Is Everything is another great one. I love this album, but yep, we gotta put it at number 6. So now my number 5 is this is the hardest that I think when I got to this one, because I wasn't sure I was gonna go, but I'm gonna go with Human as this one. And so when Death did the first 3 albums, Death has 2 real game changer albums. The first one kind of defines what death metal is. There's other bands playing heavy death metal type stuff like Possessed, Necrophagia. There's albums that are coming out, but they're not really defining the term death metal. When Scream Bloody Gore comes out, all of a sudden it's a new genre. There's something different. So now with this album, he's doing like a new genre of like technical death metal, but it's the same thing. There's other technical bands doing stuff. Everybody's getting a little better at their instruments as they're getting older. And he really takes it to the next level on this album. I love it. It's still really brutal. It's my favorite of the kind of later ones, those 3, because it's the most brutal still. It still has that brutality to them, and they're not as super as melodic. Like but it's technical. It's more technical than melodic. Than the other ones get a little bit more melodic. But Suicide Machines, Secret Phase, Together as One, Lack of Comprehension, and the God of Thunder bonus track. Chuck was a huge Kiss fan. And I don't know if these guys were listening to you on your CDs or whatever, or if you just played on YouTube, but you can listen to the God of Thunder cover, which I thought was really cool that they did that. And that Into the Void. If you guys haven't checked out that series on Hulu, they do a Chuck episode. Have you guys seen
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Yeah, I watched it. I actually
So
watched
good.
it the other day.
Yeah,
So
I'm
good.
actually I got one episode left. I just got the Dime Bag episode left, and I started yesterday, and I'm almost done today. But yeah, it's a great series. But they show him as like a kid with Ace's makeup on and stuff. So he was a Kiss fanatic as a kid. So I thought that was pretty cool. Dealing with Ace passing away recently, he's still like on our minds the whole time. But so yeah, so the one I think is surprising to a lot of people, but I kind of knew I was going to put it high, is The Sound of Perseverance. I seen him again on this tour. They had Hammerfall opening them up for him. I got the vinyl, I got the CD, but they played this little club, and it was in the middle of winter. And I remember being kind of upset because we waited for him outside the van at the end of the night, but they were like sweating, and I didn't. He might have been just starting to feel his sickness and stuff, but they didn't come out, and there was only like 10 of us out there, but it was freezing out. So we're like, just come on out for a minute and take some pictures or something. I could have met him other times and I didn't bother, but then the one night we tried to meet him anyway, then I realized, yeah, it's smart to not come out. Why get sick when you're on tour and to meet a bunch of idiots outside? But yeah, this album, man, I think I just listened to this like crazy leading up to that concert when they were coming, and they were so amazing that night when I seen them live in this little place. And the songs live just really like stayed in my mind. And when I was listening to this whole discography between yesterday and today, like I couldn't believe how like much I knew this album, because I just must have listened to it crazy. And after he died, I think I just kept listening, going to this one for some reason, because I played the other ones out so much as a kid and stuff. But yeah, Richard Christie on drums, and on this one, the story to tell, they do I guess there's a deluxe version of this that you can get like the other ones, but I didn't get the deluxe version of this because I had the original on CD. But it's got the clean vocal version. And I've heard people say that they don't think this is even a death metal album. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like the way Chuck sings, and he definitely has a different, unique voice on this. He never sounded like he does on this album. It's like a crisper, higher pitched voice, but something about the whole dry production and crisp like production of this album. But on the deluxe version, they do the clean vocal version. It's not him singing, I don't think it is. I think it's the guy from Control Deny that who was singing it, because it totally doesn't sound like him at all. But it's weird how when you hear a different singer like that, then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, maybe this isn't really like death metal. I mean, the drums are death metal, but the Chuck singing is what makes it really death metal. So when you hear that kind of vocals on it, it makes you think, how would the rest of the songs sound with like those kind of vocals? It would kind of make it something different. But that's the weird line with death metal and even thrash metal, whatever. You get a different vocals are a big part of what death metal is. So it's kind of cool that it could take on a whole new life. So what else? Like, oh, Scavenger of Human Sorrow. To me, that opening track, I love that song. I just love the way he says Scavenger. And Spirit Crusher, fucking awesome. Flesh and the Power That Holds, a great one. Yeah, it's just amazing. Every song, I wrote down like almost every song on every one of these. Oh yeah, so that's a weird little thing that I just seen come up, was that so there's these, I don't know if they're doing it for other albums, but there's a death tribute album coming out or they're working on it. And they just announced like yesterday that Chris Poland is going to be playing all of Chuck's parts, and they're redoing Sound of Perseverance with Chris Poland from Megadeth playing all Chuck's parts. And I guess they got other people coming in on songs, but he's like slated as being on like the whole album. I read, so you could see that on, I don't know if it would blabbermouth that I seen it or whatever, but I know you guys are big Megadeth fans and stuff, so I thought that was interesting
Yeah.
to read that just yesterday. So yeah, that's it then. I just got my three left. Okay, that's it.
The
All
death
right.
book, the new death book was just released today, I think.
What what documentary it was
Yeah,
where they
that-
said, oh, I'm sorry. What documentary was it? Was it the Into the Void one or was it the Death by Metal one where they said where Chuck was actually like a real good, like clean singer? Like, or am I just making this up?
If you listen to the '96 demos, you can hear Chuck sing the demos, and he got a good voice.
Yeah, I'm not
Well,
sure if
and
that's
the
him singing on the one thing that I was just talking about. I didn't think it was him because I just don't hear any.
No, I don't think I don't think it was him. I know which ones you're talking about, but forgot who it was. They said like Chuck actually did like clean vocals on something in the studio or whatever, just messing around.
I think with Control Denied, maybe he demoed stuff with his
Yeah, and they said
singing before they got a real singer in or something.
and they said like
That
his clean vocals were actually really, really, really good. And I thought that was like surprising. Just because he's
well, that's
known
another
for
cool
like
thing to bring up. It's good to bring up that he never wanted to be singer. It kind
yeah,
of
he
was like
never
one of
wanted
those
to be.
things. It's like he just
Yeah.
he wants to keep it going, so it's easier to just be the singer. But for somebody who doesn't want to be the singer, he to me is one of the greatest because even back in the
Agreed.
very early days, he's doing this brutal death metal voice, but you could always kind of hear what he was talking about, and you could hear the words, and he would
Yeah.
stretch words, and he just amazing stuff with his voice. There was a couple bands that came out on the heels of death, like Morgoth in Germany and stuff like that, and they would kind of sing the same way. Like Chuck was definitely their influence, but for somebody who didn't even like sing it, like he said something on that Into the Void where I think it was for this album for Perseverance. He said he listened to the whole album before he did his vocals. He
Yep.
said he wanted to listen to it one more time before, and then he said, "Okay, let's go mess it up now." And the producer was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, I got to sing on it now. I'm gonna mess it all up and fuck it all up now with my vocals."
Yeah.
His
So,
I
vocals
remember
are
that.
amazing on
Yeah.
that thing.
Chuck did sing on all the demos from '96 because he already started his project under a symbolic time. But you got Paul Payne singing a couple ones, but the rest is Chuck singing all the vocals and cleans. So if you listen to that disc 3 on the deluxe edition, you get to hear Chuck's all the demos for the album.
Yeah,
Wow,
that's
that's
cool that
Except
they
Paul
did
Payne.
that with all the demos.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing that in the Into the Void episode for Death, where the producer's talking and Chuck goes, "Yeah, all right, the fucking music's done. Now let me go fuck up the record with my voice," which is crazy because he sounded awesome on that. I thought.
Yeah, but at that time, I think he was he was ready to do Control Denied. He didn't want to do like the
Yeah,
know.
definitely. Yeah, no doubt.
I
All
don't
right,
mean to
so I
speak, I
guess
don't
we're
mean
at
to speak
my.
ill of the dead, but the vocalist in Control Denied, I know he's dead, but I mean, I have a big trouble taking his vocals.
Yeah, Tim Amar was fucking great on that record, man. I loved him.
That was the one cool thing about the Into the Void episode is that just recently Ovi brought up to me something about the Control Denied album that never came out, and I was like, I don't think they got that far or whatever. I don't know, but then in that episode, the producer said his goal is to finish that album somehow. Like I guess
Yeah,
there's enough to like pull it all together. So that's pretty cool that all these years later we still might get that second Control Denied album.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Because Chuck he finished his guitar parts before he died, but the vocalist has died now, and there's been like setbacks because there's been this and there's been that. It's been
yeah,
a constant struggle.
Well, that's
But I
what
think
it's
it was
many
like
years
this year,
later, and it still hasn't come
somebody, I think maybe there's one guy that's the primus, like promoters to get this done, and it's one of the members of Control Denied that's really trying this year. I can't recall his name, but
Well,
he
it was
said that the
it was
setback.
Morris. Sound, not Morris Sound, but the original Morris guy from the Morris Sound, not the younger one. He worked,
Steve
he was
Morris.
producing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was producing it. So he's the one that has all the stuff and he wants to try to like bring it to life. And we just found, and just this week, I mean, James posted it and I've seen it before, is this Madonna song all of a sudden gets released,
So
you know, where
good.
Chuck doing a Madonna song, which is bizarre, you
So
know, but
good.
so there's stuff out there that they got to pull together. I mean, they've done it like Voivod. They pulled out a whole album a year or two after Piggy, the guitar player, died, because he you had
Yeah, that's
recorded
right.
all these riffs and everything, and then they just worked around it and they put it all together. But it has been many years. But it was just nice hearing somebody say that that's a goal for him to try to get that all together. So we'll see if it ever
Yeah,
Sorry,
happens. You know?
It's Steve Diageo. That's in June this year. Was still hoping to complete the album, but Amar's death was a setback.
Mm.
Yeah, he was like crying when it got to the part at the end. Like he was trying to talk about how important it was for him to finish that album, and as he was struggling with his final like weeks and months there, like he still had it in his head that he wanted to at least try to finish the album. And it's sad that he didn't get to do it. It progressed so
Yeah.
quickly and it sucked.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very sad episode of that fucking documentary series.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Wendy Williams was like right after, and I'm like, as another one that's one of my most depressing stories of any rock star dying to me, because she like killed herself, so I was super sad, and that
Yeah.
always made me sad. So I was like 2 episodes in a row, I was like,
The
it's fucking
Dimebag
all bummed
one
out.
is
That's good.
really fucking sad too, man.
That's the final one. I only got that one left. I'm gonna watch it probably after we're done here tonight.
That's a really fucking sad episode too. And so was the Randy Rhodes one, man. I fucking cried
Yeah.
during that one too.
They're all good though. They're all definitely interesting, and I hope this series goes on forever. It's fucking
Yeah, it's a
awesome.
great series. I would like to see them do more. I would like to see them do a Cliff Burton episode, would be really cool.
Oh yeah, I'm kind of surprised that didn't make the first season actually,
Yeah.
compared to like the girl from Hellion, Ann Boylan there, and the
Right.
NME. Like people didn't even. I have the old NME CD, but most people never even heard of that band, you know, and they
Yeah,
got
that
like
was
a whole
brand new to
episode.
me. I never heard of that band before.
Keeler had a vinyl in the store recently, and I remember seeing it on vinyl and going, "Oh my god, I was gonna buy it right there." And it was like $75. He must have looked it up on like eBay or something. And I was thinking he wouldn't even know what it was. I just think he would put a $20 sticker on it. He knows now to check them all. And I'm like, fuck. And then now I don't see it in there. So I think somebody who knows their shit. But that was before the episode came out. So now with that episode out, people are really gonna be searching that on vinyl.
Oh
And he
yeah.
had one in the store just recently, and I wish I could have got it, but I do own the original CD of it.
All
And
right. So I guess
Ed
what you
Farsley,
mean now.
Ed Farsley, really quick, Ed Farsley has whatever's left of that band playing his fest next season, the Rage of Armageddon Fest.
Oh,
It's like
really?
calling it something else, but it's the NME guys that are left that are still alive or whatever, and they're going to be playing that fest, and they'll be doing like all the songs from that album. So
Oh,
that's
that's
pretty
pretty
cool.
cool. Yeah, that's awesome. So it's like the band is kind of still together, but just with a different name.
I think they just maybe got back together and they're calling it something else, but it has like the same look to their logo and stuff, but it's not like they
Okay.
were NME, so it's like enemy,
Yeah.
but that now they're calling it something else now. If you see, you'll see Ed's like flyer for it, but it's on there.
Cool. All right. I guess we're gonna go with my 7 through 4, and my number 7 is going to be Human. And it's not because I don't like it. It's a great album. I actually really like it a lot. It's just one of them has to be number 7. So here we are. This is the one I reach for the least. Even though I do really like it. Flattening of Emotions is so good. Suicide Machine is one that lasted throughout the years and stayed through their set list as it should have. Secret Face is great. I really love the lyrics in this album. Um, Everything from spiritual healing on, I really love the lyrics too, because Chuck starts to talk about how fucking awful and disgusting human beings can be. And I really appreciate that. Um, the gore and zombies and stuff is very cool. I appreciate that as well, but I appreciate the insight that he has as he grows up as a human being and looks at other humans around him and the way we act and the way we treat each other and just the way that we are and just how observant he is and talking about human beings as just a terrible species. So I really appreciate the lyrics on this album and everything going forward as well. Lack of comprehension is so good. And as has been mentioned, the cover of God of Thunder is just so cool. So cool hearing Chuck sing that. Fucking fantastic.
Quick thing about his vocals, I mean his lyrics there is like that was another thing like he did was that, you know, all of a sudden by the time Spiritual Healing comes out, now we have all of a sudden 5,000 death metal bands, and they're all singing about zombies and horror movies, and so like he's like another step ahead of people with musically he is, but also like the whole concept of what death metal should be, and it's still death related. There's definitely like, you know, death
Yes.
is always the theme throughout. It's a smarter way of approaching it. I wouldn't really say smarter, but it's just like if everybody's doing the same thing, then to come up with like it's like another turn he did with the music. So that some people, that's
Yes.
the line that they like the gory stuff and then they didn't like that. But I thought it was cool that he wasn't just doing the same thing over and over again, you know.
Agreed. And there are lots of like kind of elitist death metal fans that are like, after Spiritual Healing, fucking it's garbage, blah blah blah, because it gets too technical, gets too melodic. It's not about fucking quote unquote death anymore. And I hate that because it is still about death. It's just looking at it in a different way and coming at it from a different angle. And that's what Chuck was all about. If you watch that Into the Void episode, there's parts in that where Chuck talks about, like, I don't want to be lumped in with Cannibal Corpse and
He
Morbid
didn't want to
Angel.
even be on the same fly. He didn't even want to be on the same flyers like for his like
Yeah,
for his albums coming out. And Cannibal Corpse is like the exact opposite. They're a band that started with the gore lyrics and they stayed with them. And people respect
right.
them for that. And that's cool too. You know, they kind of
Yeah,
cornered their niche and they said, we're gonna stick with it. And a lot of bands did that. Slayer kind of did it. And you know,
yeah,
people say AC/DC did it and stuff. It's like some band it works for some bands, but Chuck didn't want to be like pigeonholed to that, and he changed, and he would have always kept evolving. I think if he was still around, who knows what kind of shit he'd be doing now.
absolutely. And that's for me why I appreciate Death more than pretty much every other death metal band, is because Chuck was always stretching boundaries and pushing things and going different places. And, in that documentary, you hear him say, like, yeah, I got called a poser by like all my peers because I was doing different things and trying to get more melodic, trying to get more technical, not talking about gore and blood and zombies, trying to talk about mental things and trying to talk about the human species and stuff. And a lot of his peers would be like, fucking death is fucking, that's poser shit, dude. That's not death metal. That's fucking, they're a power metal band or whatever, and I love that Chuck stuck to his guns and just did what he wanted to do and didn't let his peers' words affect what he was going for. He just wrote what he wrote, and he wrote what he felt, and he wrote what felt good, and he put it out, and that was it. That's what I love about him.
He followed his individual thought patterns. He didn't
Mm,
follow other
mm,
people's
mm.
thought patterns.
Exactly. That being said, my number 6 is going to be Leprosy. And it's a killer album, and I love it. Fantastic album, but one of them's got to be number 6, right? So this one's number 6. Um, one of the very first Death songs I ever heard was Pull the Plug, because I got a cassette copy of At Death's Door. If any of you guys remember that, that was a Roadrunner
1, 2, and 3. Yep.
compilation cassette that I had got, and I got it from my
I still
local
have
record
it. I still
store.
have it.
I got it from my local record store for like $2, and I saw that Sepultura was on it, and I knew who they were, so I grabbed it because of Sepultura. And then hearing Pull the Plug made me go, "Oh shit! I guess I got to. I guess I got to get into Death." Um. So yeah, I got this like a few years after getting that sampler, and it's a fantastic record, man. Open Casket is so good. Choke on It is a great ender. The title track is fucking awesome. Left to Die, so good. It's the blueprint for everything that came after it, as far as I'm concerned. This is, Chuck laying the bricks down for everybody to fucking follow after. And that's how I feel about the first couple Death records. Fantastic album, but it's my number 6. Number 5 is going to be Spiritual Healing for me. And this again is where I feel Chuck starts to lyrically turn from the blood and gore and zombies to the real life stuff. And yeah, definitely Living Monstrosity, just such a good song talking about, drug use during pregnancy and how awful that can be. And Defensive Personalities is so great. Within the Mind is awesome. Low Life is probably my favorite track on this album. Really like that one a lot. Just a good fucking solid death metal song. And here's where the turn happens. Here's where it gets a little less thrashy and the tech starts to come in, but just a little bit, but not until the next record is when it gets really tech. But yeah, just a great album. Great album. So number 4 for me is going to be Individual Thought Patterns. This is the second Death album I ever owned. And it took me a little while to get into this, man. I was young when I got this album and didn't really connect with the techie, proggy stuff yet. It took me a while. It took me a good, like, 10 to 12 listens to really understand what was going on with this album. But sometimes that's, the better albums wind up being like that, where it takes you a long time to get into it. Overactive Imagination is fantastic. Jealousy is a great song on here. Mentally Blind, Out of Touch. Out of Touch is probably my favorite on this. And if you watch that Death episode of Into the Void, and you see where Chuck is talking about, I didn't want to be involved and associated with the other guys in the death metal scene anymore because I felt like I was going beyond that. The lyrics to Out of Touch really kind of hit on where he was mentally there at that point in time, where he was talking about, the guys in the death metal scene who were calling him poser and all that stuff. And he was kind of hitting back with that song lyrically. and saying, oh, well, I'm a poser, but you guys are just kind of fucking stuck where you are. And I'm moving forward. I'm moving on. I'm doing different things. And you guys are just sort of stuck there talking about zombies and horror and stuff. And I'm not advocating and saying like every other band like that was fucking shit. Just kind of think it's pretty cool to look at those lyrics and understand where mentally Chuck was at that point in time, talking about that stuff. Because I know a lot of the shit in the media really bothered him and really kind of got to him and made him feel some kind of way. So listening to Out of Touch really sort of takes you to where he was at that point in time in his life, and I think that that's a fantastic song.
Yeah, he was maturing musically and just like as a person. So he getting older and realizing like he could write better songs and better lyrics and stuff. And a lot of bands change like that. The first Death stuff, he was like 16 when he was like coming up with the first songs and stuff. Going
Yeah, he
back
was a
to all the
kid.
demos, they had like I think they get like 7 demos before that first album comes out. I got like one of
Yeah,
them.
yeah, no doubt. Oh, there you go, mutilation demo. There you go.
Love that fucking demo.
Absolutely.
That's the one I
So
have.
we're gonna do another sweep around and go from 3 to 1. Our top 3 Death albums.
Mhm.
Ovi, what do you
Yeah.
got for your top 3?
My number 3 is gonna be Human. Human for me is a milestone because it's so well produced and it's like he has gotten surrounded by a complete band like that are evenly skilled, and I think that comes out in Human. I think James Murphy kind of gave him a challenge. I think that put him on a track to become a better guitar player because James Murphy really pushed the edge and kind of like stepped up the game for him. And then he found people that was even more technical. So, but Human in itself is just such a landmark in itself. That's why I keep it so high. I got church and I got everything of it. My favorite songs is Together as One and See Through Dreams, but Vacant Planets is the stuff. It's such a good. It has such an atmosphere. I could probably say that whole album. The whole album has a special feel. There's like
Yes.
you go into a certain like state of mind when you listen to that album because there's no album before it that sounds like it. There's no album after it sounds like it, which is kind of Chuck's thing you were in talking about for quite some time here, James. That he kind of went his own way. My number 2 is going to be Leprosy. I mean, I studied that. I studied that artwork so much. I remember as a young kid that this being pink was kind of interesting choice. But it's Ed. What's his last name? Ralphus.
Ed Repka.
Ed Repka.
Ed Rep.
I
He
wish
does
he
he
would
does
have.
he does the first 3 albums. He does all the first 3 albums
I
and
wish
a
he would have
million other
stuck with
bands.
him. I wish he would have stuck with him because I love all his artworks are so great. Ed is probably on top 3 of album covers.
Yeah, he did all those Megadeth ones and stuff. He's done more album covers than any other metal artist. Like nobody comes close. I met him at a convention. He had posters for every one of them, all the albums, and you could just fucking get it a poster and he'll sign it. But it was like the only place you would find a lot of those posters. But I only got one of them from him. I got the
Yeah.
original Nuclear Assault album.
My favorite songs on Leprosy, well, Leprosy in itself is just it has everything that I miss from Scream Bloody Gore. It has everything that I like. Yeah, I want in Scream Bloody Gore, but it's of course the money, it's the recording abilities, it's like it's the time. So it's not something you can really blame on anyone. It's just what you like. The songs choke on it, Forgotten Past, but Primitive Ways is really my favorite from Leprosy. And then my number 1 is gonna be Ralphus's Shirt. It's gonna be Symbolic. It's the first death album I ever bought. It's the first introduction I had to death at all. Um, if you got the remastered version, I hate that it's on Roadrunner. I hate it so bad because the only one that lacks the relapse 3 discs remasters where you get all demos and lives and stuff. Because Roadrunner is so, I don't understand what's eating your ass, but there must be something powerful because they keep that shit tight. So, but if you listen to the remaster version, you get like demos from '94. Well, you have Steve Vidaggio doing the bass on the demos for Symbolic, so you can hear the
Nice.
difference from him and the one they picked. And of course, Bobby, the guitar player, which is really a jazz player, he hasn't really done anything death metal except Symbolic, as far as I know.
Yeah, that's right.
He's like a jazz teacher in 3 different schools in guitars.
Yeah.
He's a maestro, but he's so cool because he grew up with Chuck. I believe they went to the same high school together, if I remember
Yes.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, they went to school together.
Yeah. And he is in Death Toll, so I think the guy that sings in Death Toll, I know he tried to looks like Chuck, and he really has the same guitar and stuff, and he really pays tribute. I've seen Death Toll with Steve Diageo uh, a couple of summers ago, and I'm going to see them again next summer. It's just, I really like it. I understand what Rick said about he wished that bands would just pay tribute and don't use the Death name, but it's like I think those guys because they stick really much to around Symbolic. They do all the classics, but they stick around the Symbolic stuff. Symbolic for me was the first technical death album I ever heard too. Well, I guess you can call it kind of prog death because Son of Perseverance is a prog death album. It's not so much technical death anymore. It's becoming more and more prog, and I think Symbolic is kind of the first prog death metal album that's ever been done. I think because we didn't have any prog death before that, did we, Ralph?
There's bands like Atheist were considered like prog death, and Cynic, who end up being members of in Death, they kind of start right from the get go, pretty much as like as a technical, I mean, if prog or technical, but there's definitely were technical bands that were doing it, but maybe not like on that same level where like every song was kind of that way. It was like you were getting bits and pieces of it, but there's definitely a few others, but they kind of defined it like because Death was the bigger band. So when kind of same thing with Scream Bloody Gore being like considered one of the first death metal albums, it's like they kind of made it like the thing to follow. Like they started like a genre, but there's always other bands that were kind of out there doing it too.
Yeah, because Symbolic, I think, is the first album where you have like calm parts with like atmospheric things and just like what we call the bongo drums, and like you have all kinds of mood settings, and it's really a deep record. It's like a one of a kind album, which most of his albums are. But Symbolic for me was my first taste. I was like 14 when it came out. It sets its tracks on me. My favorite song is Thousand Eyes and Empty Words, but the first song that I really kicked that really made me a Death fan is Without Judgment. I think the melody and his guitar playing on that song is so good. It's just a melody that I can just close my eyes and I can hear the melody in a second. That starting of that song is just phenomenal. So Without Judgment is my favorite Death song of all time.
Nice. Good shit, Ovi.
It,
Good picks. Miles. 3, 2, and 1.
I dig
What do
Miles
you
because
got?
we are the opposite. Me and Miles are the opposite, so I dig it because he started on Symbolic, I finished on Symbolic. So it's so cool because we are in a different pattern, and it's just but still like the same things. So it's
I
really
started
cool.
with Symbolic.
Yeah,
I started with Symbolic too.
Oh yeah,
Symbolic
you
was
did.
my
You did.
number
Sorry.
4.
That was my number 7.
Right, right.
But coming after Symbolic, and this is my favorite of the, I guess you could say, technical era death or whatever you want to call it. It's Individual Thought Patterns.
Oh, yeah, nice.
I absolutely love this record. I think that Chuck on this record, his vocal approach on here, you know, he sounds like he's pissed off at somebody. You know, it sounds like he's just like he's talking to. It sounds like his vocals are like directed at somebody, like personally. It just sounds so just. He just sounds like he's ready to rip somebody's head off vocally. Um, Gene Hoglan, this is his first record, playing drums on it. He's absolutely amazing. Steve DiGiorgio, I mean, just great on bass. But what I think really elevates this record for me is Chuck's guitar playing and Andy LaRock's guitar playing on this record. Them two complement each other so well on this record. It's just amazing. Obviously, Andy coming out of King Diamond's camp and
Mhm.
playing on this record. But I mean, the songs Jealousy, Trapped in a Corner, The Philosopher, Out of Touch. My favorite song on here, one of my favorite Death songs ever, is Mentally Blind.
Mm.
The lyrics on here are just like so, they just sound like they're so personal with Chuck's vocal delivery. Just sounds like he was trying to prove a like say a point to somebody or some group, and that's why I love it so much. Coming in at number 3, and when I did my ranking a few years ago, this was actually my number 2 record. That's how much I like this record. But going back and listening, coming in at number 2 is definitely Leprosy. Leprosy is one of those records. It's one of the first death metal records I ever heard. And I mean, this is probably one of the most listened to records for me. I mean, you got Left to Die, Born Dead, you got Open Casket, Primitive Ways, Choke on It, Pull the Plug is a death metal anthem, in my opinion. It's just so great, so amazing. Not much you can say else you could say about Leprosy. It's one of the most well-known death metal records. Definitely a great one. And my favorite death record is actually the first death metal record I ever listened to. It's my second favorite death metal album ever released, and that is Scream Bloody Gore, the first record. I mean, I got fucking, 2 copies of this motherfucker. I got the fucking, one's the black vinyl, one's the colored vinyl. I got the CD of Scream Bloody Gore with all the extra shit on it.
You'll be getting a big Christmas present from Ralph this
I
year.
have I think I've told Ralph this already. I think he knew. Like, I absolutely fucking worship this record. Like I said, it's the first death metal record I ever heard. The first death song, death metal, death song I ever heard was Baptized in Blood. And it was fucking so amazing. Zombie Ritual, man, fucking sacrificial cunt. I fucking love it, man.
God despise.
Yeah, fucking Evil Dead, dude. Oh man. I could go on forever about this record. I remember before like the reissues came out, I was looking for this record and it had been out of print for a while. I think I went to every fucking record store in Louisiana, and the first thing I said was, "Do y'all have Scream Bloody Gore by Death?" And they were all like, "No, we don't." And fucking, I was like, I looked for this record, and then fucking when the represses came out, I bought. Every time I saw it, I think I bought it. The album cover is one of my favorite album covers ever released. It's just so goddamn fucking amazing. And then out of this, you got, come on, Chris Reifert on drums on this record. I mean, fuck, dude, this record, dude, Scream Bloody Gore is so goddamn iconic. It's fucking, it's not the first death metal record, but it's the one that set the fucking standard Like, this is what death metal is gonna be. It's gonna be fucking violent. It's gonna be fucking nasty. It's just gonna be fucking, and it's Death's most, besides the demos, is Death at their most primitive. It's just so fucking raw. It's in your face. Chuck and Chris Reifert on this record is just fucking primitive sludge on this. Like I said, I can go on for hours about Scream Bloody Gore. It's my second favorite death metal record ever released. I absolutely love that record, and it's my favorite death record. Nothing's ever gonna beat it in the death discography, but Scream Bloody Gore.
You gotta say what's number one again, because I probably heard you say it, but I forget. What is your number one?
My favorite death metal record ever released is fucking Altars of Madness by
I thought you
Morbid Angel. Is my favorite. But Scream Bloody Gore, when I first heard Scream Bloody Gore, I was like, dude, death metal is so fucking cool. So, you know, you look up what's the most well-known death metal records. And the second one I found was this album called Altars of Madness by Morbid Angel. So I was like, all right, let me check out this one. So I checked out that one. I was like, holy shit. You know, so if it wasn't for Scream Bloody Gore, you know, I probably would have never really got into death metal. But so there you go.
Do you have the triple CD?
Yeah. It's the special whatever. No, it's the double disc with all the demos and the rehearsals on it.
If you get the triple disc, you get 30 rehearsals from 86.
Woo!
And a cover of Possessed death metal.
Yeah, that's right. Good shit, Miles. Count Ralphus. 3,
All right, so
2, and 1.
all right, so yeah, it's the first three. So I mean, here's the special editions with the on CD with the double discs. I didn't get any of the triple disc ones, but I got all three of these original vinyls. I guess I'll start off with Spiritual Healing as my number
Mhm.
3. This album was amazing. I seen them on this tour at the Streets with Forbidden and Devastation and a local band called Prime Evil played, and it was fucking amazing in this little club when Death was really starting to like blow up. And it was like, I mean, there wasn't many tours that of this kind of music going on back then. This was like just really groundbreaking. Yeah, you get James Murphy in there, and I think it gets a little bit more melodic on this album. The lyrics start to change a little bit, but I think it's more the production that grabbed people, like as far as like it being so different than the first. It just seemed like a way cleaner production, and it's like I said, every Death album has like a different feeling from the production. So yeah, I mean, song wise, I was thinking like a hard episode would be pick the 5 worst Death songs, because there's not a song on any one of these albums that I don't like. Like there's not one that for 7 albums straight, it's like not one song stands out as like a stinker to me. Like there's not one
Yeah.
fucking song. I like every fucking song. So but yeah, I mean, Living Monstrosity, you guys talked about all the great songs on there, and so yeah, I'll just move right over to the fucking Leprosy. Got my original gatefold. Just did an interview last week with Rick Ross. Got to do 2 episodes with him and on Almost Human. This album stuff really started to change with this one because for one, Scream Bloody Gore makes such a tremendous like ripple in the world of extreme metal and extreme music. So all of a sudden there's tons of bands, like just from that one album, all of a sudden there's so many death metal bands. By the time Leprosy's coming out, there's so many bands either having just demos out, like the Immolations, or like the big second wave of death metal. They all either have demos out or they're putting out their first albums, but they're all kind of following. But I remember when Leprosy came out, it just seemed like a different shift going on in music. Like Scream Bloody Gore made an impact, but it wasn't like everybody, there was no videos, it wasn't like everybody got a hold of it. And so I had a friend who had an older brother that had Scream Bloody Gore, and I remember him playing it And I was just like, what the fuck is this at first? Because we just never heard anything really like it. Like we kind of heard Possessed and stuff, and but this was like something different. But then when I heard the song Zombie Ritual, I was like, whoa. All of a sudden it clicked. And then all the rest of the songs clicked for me. But it's kind of weird how like one song like can do that. It's the same thing happened to me with Venom. I heard Evil in League with Satan, and then all of a sudden it made sense, and it was clear where everything was kind of noise up until then. So it's like sometimes that one song grabs you. But I remember with this album, the song Pull the Plug, it was like someone I think said it was like an anthem for death metal. It's definitely like a Hammer Smash Face or something. It's like one of those songs that if you're gonna pick one song that for someone said this is what death metal is. If you can't like this one song, then don't bother with this genre because it's not for you. But I remember I had friends that were in like a crossover kind of thrash hardcore mixed band. It was like a crossover band. And when they heard this album, they started covering Pull the Plug. And within a year, they broke up the band and started death metal band. And that band ended up being like guys from Morpheus Descends in the New York area. They like this album was
shit.
like that was it. They were like, we're not doing this crossover thing now. Like quickly, like once that came on and they realized they could play this song, Pull the Plug, they were like, that's it. This is what we're gonna do. And they haven't stopped since. So that's how important this fucking album is. It was a real game changer. In a way, it's more of a game changer than this classic album because the masses got the hands on Leprosy, and I got to see them on Leprosy tour. There was a famous, there's the famous Ultimate Revenge videotape VHS. To me, it was the most
Yes.
important VHS back in the day. It was Slayer, Venom, and Exodus, and we used to just play it out to death, And then years later, a second one came out, and the second one was Death, Dark Angel, Raven, Forbidden, and Faith or Fear or something. I forget all the other bands on it, but that one they did a tour for it, and that came right to the chance, and so I got to see Death with Rick Ross playing and stuff, and they played the chance. It was like the same week as they filmed that show in Philadelphia, I believe they filmed it, and
Wow.
so it was like the same week, but Raven wasn't on the bill. That was the only thing that was kind of different than the VHS. I should have pulled the VHS out. But anyway, so it got Leprosy. People are seeing Death now play these songs because of that VHS. That VHS back then there was no extreme other VHSs you could find. There was probably the first one really that you can go out and buy. So they really start blowing up with that one. But this is the album that changes everything for me. I mean, I got this guy right here, the one skeleton with his goblet of gore spilling some fucking whatever he's drinking. I got that tattooed on the back of my arm over here, but I can't show you. I've showed it before on here, but that's how important this album is to me. As I wanted something a tattoo that represented death metal, and this
Everything
album.
froze.
Oh shit!
We're out.
Yeah.
Oh, James
still
just frozen. You're good.
yeah.
James.
Oh, I'm still good. So
Yeah, the James that it froze up.
yeah, that happens to Keeler sometimes when he's doing it. But anyway, if I'm frozen, I'm frozen. But this album cover, I would just stare at it. It just embodied what the music inside was. And it's probably the worst produced album of the whole entire. It is definitely the worst produced album, but there's something magical in its sound. The sound to me, I wouldn't change anything. I don't want to hear like it's such a different sound from Leprosy. Everything is so clear and crystal kind of, but then it gets even clearer for spiritual healing. This is more of a murky kind of sound, but it's just so barbaric and caveman like to me. I just love every single song on this. It's not even worth talking about, but Zombie Ritual was the song that really grabbed me, and that kind of changed my life, that one song. And once I got this album for myself, that was it. I kind of stopped listening to thrash. It was like Death, and then it just went into the more extreme stuff for a good decade after that. And then it wasn't until like the year like 2000 when there was a million death metal bands doing it, and the scene was so flooded. and I already had listened to all the new black metal that was coming out and stuff like that. Like I finally started going back to my roots more, and then I started discovering bands that I missed when I was a kid, like Thin Lizzy and stuff that I just was like, I got into extreme music and I had to go backwards. And for the last 25 years, it's been like that. But I always kept up with my favorite death metal bands and stuff like that. But because of this album, I pretty much for like a decade, I didn't listen to like when Painkiller came out, I could give two shits. This hearing Death do Painkiller kind of made me like Judas Priest's version because I had just been like out of it with all the old traditional metal bands and everything. But then I went back and I rediscovered everything that I missed. But I blame it all on that Scream Bloody Gore. So yeah, my number one.
Well,
That's it.
Screamer Bloody Gore, the first album produced in the Morrison Sound Studios.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah,
Of
there
the
was a
metal-
couple of the
metal-
Whiplash had an album produced there. It was like the first Scott Burns one, but I think even like Sabotage and stuff like that was being produced before like the other Scott Burns started producing like a ton of bands, but he was just like a technician that he wasn't like the main guy, his brother was or whatever.
Mhm.
They're the ones that ran the studio, but then he kind of took over and he did all the million bands. But the main guy who didn't stay in like with all the millions of metal bands, but they had done like Whiplash, Ticket to Mayhem was done there, and a handful of other ones, not many. It's all in that Scott Burns book that I got.
Hey Ralph, that's
Right.
that copy of Scream Bloody Gore you got, that's the Combat Records one?
Yeah,
Can I want to see the back of it.
it's got that guy who like didn't even
Ja-
play on a John
Don
Hamm.
Hand. He didn't even play on the
Yeah.
record, and I don't think he did any live shows on it with him.
Oh, there he is. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, he
that's
never
him.
played a live show with him. He just
He-
happened to be there right at that time, And even on Leprosy, Terry Butler, great Terry Butler, he was intimidated when he got into the studio, and Chuck ended up playing all the bass on that album,
yeah, he played
which
all
I
the
don't know
bass on
if
it.
these guys, yeah. And Terry's such a great bass player, and he liked how he played live and everything, but something about the microscope of being in the studio. Some people freeze up when it's like their first time. Now he's done a million
Yeah.
albums. He's an
Yeah,
awesome bass player.
they got that guy John Hand on the back of Scream Bloody Gore on the Combat Records one, and he didn't do really anything with Death, and
No,
so like
he's not on those
no,
the
look, they only got Chuck and Chris.
that's great though. That's the way it should be because
Yeah,
this
they were the
guy,
two.
yeah, he never did anything. He just like happened to be there for a minute.
But what I like about the you get all these cool pictures with Chuck and Chris, man. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
it's so like you get all
I,
that cool stuff.
I read the one book on Chuck that was done by some guy South America, and it's cool. It was like the chronicle of everything that happened, and it goes through his sickness and everything. But now this new book that's out, the Born Human, that one
Like so much
the family endorses it, and it's gonna have like way more. It'll be like the
Mhm.
episode you watched on Into the Void times 10, I guess. And I definitely gotta get that as soon as I can. And the guy Ed Repka did those first three albums. He does the cover of the book of
Yeah,
Chuck,
that's right.
so it's pretty
And
cool.
what I
Yeah.
think is so cool about the re-releases is like you get this where you get like a letter Chuck sent to Sepultura, and then you got
Yeah.
Max Calavera like talks about like him being pen pals with Chuck, and they got the
Oh
letter
yeah,
and shit.
he's always wearing a Sepultura shirt
Yeah,
before
look.
we even
Yeah.
knew who the fuck that was. No one knew
Yeah,
That's
you
who
got
he
a
was
right.
back then.
Sepultura. Yep.
While they were black metal.
I've looked through this Scream Bloody Gore like record so many times. It's so great.
The best thing about the guy that doesn't do anything on the album is his T-shirt on the picture.
Yeah. That's true.
Pleasure to kill.
All right. So I guess we're going to go through my top three. My number three is going to be Symbolic. I love this one, man. Zero Tolerance is so good. The title track is awesome. 1000 Eyes if you read the lyrics to that and think about where we're at right now
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in, social media and internet times,
Yep.
where everybody's constantly fucking looking at you, everybody's constantly seeing what you're doing, knows where you are. Fantastic. He was so far ahead of the times with that. Without judgment, like I think it was Ovi that said he loves that one. That's such a fucking good song. And of course, Crystal Mountain. Who doesn't love that? That's a classic death song. So that's my number 3. My number 2.
Just to jump in, sorry. Do any of you guys have like a book or like know where those pictures for Symbolic for the band was taken? It sees in the swamps, but it's like exist like more pictures from that session.
I
No,
don't know.
I don't know.
Was it
It's
such a cool?
probably not because he kept switching lineups, so everything was like, album tour and then be a new lineup before you knew it.
Yeah.
So like whatever live pictures would be out there, that'd probably be the only pictures you would find. They
Right.
really do many photo sessions,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I didn't get like Symbolic recently got re-released on vinyl, and
Mhm.
I didn't get a copy of it.
It's still and it's already spendy.
Of course it is, yeah, because there was only so many copies made of it.
If you have the original Symbolic from
Oh, there you
95, you
go
got
with the white
milestone.
vinyl. That's
I
nice.
found
Yeah.
this motherfucker in the wild in like an old record store. It was collecting dust in the back. And this is a repress. I think it's what
From
year?
2000 and something.
Yeah. And I bought it for like $25 probably.
Nice.
And then like so I priced my records on Discogs, and when I priced this one, I was like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you lucked out, dude.
Yeah.
Number 2 for me is going to be Scream Bloody Gore. And it's the first Death album I ever owned. After I got that At Death's Door compilation, not long after I got that, I was so into Pull the Plug that I went to my local record store and was like, yo, I got that At Death's Door compilation and I love the Death song on it. What else do you got from Death? And all he really had was Scream Bloody Gore. So I said, all
Mhm.
right, cool. Grabbing it, taking it home, studying it, got into it. For some reason, I guess maybe because I got this album in the fall, this album reminds me of the fall. It reminds
Mhm.
me of October and November and December.
Mhm.
And probably because I got this album in that time frame and used to listen to it walking back and forth to high school after I got it. So it just kind of reminds me of Leaves on the Ground and horror movies and
Visiting the
early sunset
cemetery.
and all that stuff. It's got that vibe to it. Just a great album, man. There's nothing bad on this. Infernal Death is so good. Denial of Life is another one of my top favorites on this. I love Baptized in Blood, and the title track is fucking fantastic. It's so thrashy, and this is, to me, a lot of people say the first Possessed album is the first Death album, first death metal album. I really consider this the first death metal album because it's the first one that's just got all the death metal things that are death metal about it. Even though that first Possessed album has the song death metal on it, just to me, this is This is the first death metal record, as far as I'm concerned. I'll fight everybody on that. This is the first death metal record, man. Scream
It's
Bloody
like,
Gore.
you know, in 1985, when that Seven Churches came out, that term death metal wasn't a term for like a genre yet. It's the same thing with Venom having the song black metal. Yeah, they
With
had the
Venom,
song.
yeah, exactly.
They weren't calling, like, Merciful Fate wasn't called black metal because, and they were just as even more evil probably, you know, but like
Right,
it wasn't a genre. It would still be calling speed. Everything was being called speed metal at the time, or
right.
thrash. Once the term thrash came, then Possessed was considered thrash. It was when Death Scream Bloody Gore came out where somebody said, all right, we got to start calling this something else because this is a little bit different. It's going over a line. There's a line, and there were so many bands that straddled that line between
Yes.
death and possessed. I mean, you know, like, is it thrash or is it death metal? And it's the same thing when you go back into the late '60s. What's the first heavy metal band? And it's like, yeah,
Sure.
it's basically when that first Sabbath album comes out, you go, okay, they're doing something that embodies this word or whatever. And this has got to be it. Yeah, the Beatles had a song here, and this band, Hendrix, has a song or two, and then Blue Cheer. It's like, but there's a certain band that comes and says, okay, this is the sound, and it's something different, and that's a groundbreaking albums, you know. That's why I always go with Death, Scream Bloody Gore as being like
I would
where.
be saying that I would say the first death metal album for me, it wasn't released until 91, but Abominations from Morbid Angels from 86, if it'd been released in 86, as it was
Well,
intended.
but that's the thing though, is Death had 7 demos before Scream Bloody Gore came out. So you got the band Mantis, you got Massacre at the same time too.
Mm,
Like, you got these bands doing demos, and even Morbid Angels doing demos before that Abominations comes out. You know, so it's like
yeah.
that's where you tracing everything back. It's like, okay, this band, like, Death was doing demos when Possessed, you know, Seven Churches is coming out. But you got to go by
Mm,
what's released as becomes what it is,
yeah,
because
of course.
these bands aren't all hearing each other, and they're just, everybody's just taking it a step further and step further. So it's not like someone's copying each other or anything like that. It's whoever gets it out first. So you know, some people say it's Possessed, Seven Churches, and I don't want to argue. Okay, you know, it's brutal vocals, but at
Yeah.
the time, I remember we were calling that super heavy thrash metal. We weren't calling it death
Right.
metal, even though, like you said, they even had a demo called death metal, and then they had the
Mm.
song called death metal. But yeah, we weren't calling it that at the time. And it's the same thing with hardcore and punk. Back then, a lot of the hardcore bands were just called punk bands. And then somebody at one point said, "Okay, this is different than punk. It's hardcore punk." And then
Right.
it's like, so it's like this. It's always an interesting thing of what your take is
So
on.
Ralph, when did you get the like the because I know Abominations was released as a bootleg back in 86, 87 on like tapes and stuff. Did you hear it before it came out?
I didn't hear it before Morbid Angel. Like, I got Altars of Madness, then I found the Thy Kingdom Come 7-inch, which was
Okay.
still in circulation. Maybe it was a bootleg that I actually got on 7-inch, but then it was like, yeah, when Abomination's Desolation, I didn't even realize, like you just didn't, these bands weren't in magazines. They were underground zines, you know, would maybe have a little mention of them and stuff like that, but it wasn't like common knowledge. There's no internet. There's like, so you're finding things out, and then you get this album, all of a sudden this album comes out, and you're like, wait, Dave Vincent's not singing, and this is an album before like, it just didn't make sense at the time. It was like, what the fuck is this? You know, we know Nocturnus is going, and oh, this is that guy from Nocturnus, and he was drumming and singing. Oh, it was just like, you know, you had to learn it as you know. Then all of a sudden these underground death metal magazines started coming out, and you got more and more of like the history of everything. And it wasn't until really the internet comes along that you can really see the line of stuff, like, oh, here's a band from '82 that was doing death metal, you
Necro
know. And
Necrophagia.
yeah, they're definitely, I mean, I had Necrophagia and Possessed before I had Death first album, you know. So
Killjoy.
but the Necrophagia and the Death, I believe they came out the same year, but it was like, they had demos and stuff out too, and other recordings and stuff, but it was like you know, it was hard to find that stuff. You know,
Yeah,
you had to mail away.
I believe Necrophagia came out like a little bit before, like a few months before Scream Bloody Gore did.
I remember having it before Scream Bloody Gore, so it kind of made a little bit more sense. But even Necrophagia, the thing with them is they're full on death metal vocals and lyrically, but they didn't have those double bass drumming. It had like a weird thrash kind of drumming. So that's what kind of kept it more in the thrash world. But then when you look back, it's like, well, these guys are definitely they're horror lyrics, total death metal lyrics, you know, and they're definitely an inspiration to so many bands, you know, just the way Possessed was. Possessed was like the inspiration for all the evil death metal bands like Morbid Angel and Deicide, so the bands that wanted to be like a satanic death metal. And then you had Necrophagia, they were like the hard death, they were more like the Cannibal Corpse death
Cannibal
metal.
Corpse. Yep.
So it's, you know, it's a great thing that you could just go on and on about, you know.
So Chuck is from Florida, right?
Yes.
No, he's actually from New York. Like he was born in New York, but as a little
Okay.
kid, and then I think he was born in Long Island, I believe. But then you know his family moved down there, and same thing with Cannibal Corpse. They were a Buffalo band, and then they moved down there eventually
Glenn
because they
Benton
had
too.
Yeah, he
Glenn-
was upstate New
Yeah,
York.
but I
Yeah,
mean, like,
Upstate New
because
York.
Morbid Angel, they're Florida band, right?
Yeah,
Morbid
they-
Angel, yeah.
yeah, yep. They're all
So
Florida.
Chuck and Mike Browning and Trey, they gotta know each other back in '86. That community can't be that big.
Yeah, well, they would all be at the early Death shows. You know, when Death starts playing, they're all there. Chuck is wearing a Morbid Angel shirt really early on. You know, so he's wearing like one
Yeah.
of those early Morbid shirts.
Yeah.
You know, so those bands are all there. You know, the guys from Deicide are kids, and they're there. And you know, a couple age difference, maybe a little bit between some of them, and some of them the same age, but they just got their band started a little later, and they were doing other things, but. It's
So just
always
throwing a
great
question here,
history.
because what you guys say on Scream Bloody Gore, it's so unique. It has such a strange feeling to you. So what are you guys' thoughts on Abominations, the first Morbid Angel from '86? What's your feeling around? Because I feel that demo or that first album is so unique. It has such a special sound to it.
It's so weird to me. It was nothing because I was already a huge fan of the first two albums. By the time I got that, it was like, what the fuck is this? Like, I barely listened to it. I even to this day, like, I just don't go back to it. To me, the definitive versions of those songs are the first album. You know, Altars. So, like, I prefer Altars a million times more. But I should go back to it and listen. I bought it on CD as soon as it came out because I was like, what is this? You know, and but like it's kind of like when you bought the Amon album that came out, it was the early Deicide stuff. It's like, yeah, it's cool to hear this. It's cool to hear this early version, but I'm not gonna play it over the original first Deicide album because that's the album that I loved. And so it's cool to have and hear it, but it's just like it's kind of like when you go back and get demos of stuff. You know, when you had the demo version compared to if you had the demo first, you might like that better than the album version. But if you had the album first and that's what you got to know the songs, it's the same thing with like the live episode we did the other day with the live albums. It's like when you were a kid, if you had the Kiss albums with the live versions, then when you heard their studio versions, they sounded stiff and boring because you were used to the live versions. So it's the same thing with the demos and stuff. Some people prefer the demos because they had them for 2 years before the album came out, and then they think the album was too polished or something, and they prefer the demo. And I've heard stuff myself where I go, "Oh yeah, their demo was great," and then when the album came out, I didn't like it as much. But you only hear so many demos before an album comes out, so it wasn't like all the time that would happen, you know.
Okay.
I like
Because
I like
Yeah.
Abominations. I think Mike Browning sounds fucking evil on that record.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I don't, well, obviously I'm like with Ralph. I heard Altars of Madness before Abominations. It's
Mhm.
cool to hear those early versions of those songs, but one thing that I don't like about Abominations is that the songs are a lot slower. They're a lot.
Yeah, no Sandoval on drums.
Yeah, no
Sandoval's
Sandoval's not
one of the
on it.
greatest drummers ever.
You got Mike Browning on it, who's playing drums on Abominations, and I think Mike Browning's a good drummer, but at that point, I think he got a lot better when he got, as the years went on. But it's a lot slower, with Pete Sandoval on drums
Yeah,
on that.
just that alone is the difference to
Yeah,
me. Like, and Dave Vincent's vocals are better. I think he's one of the
I
other
like.
great vocalists. He's another one of those guys. He's singing these brutal death metal, but you hear the fucking words. If you're reading the lyrics, you hear the words when he's singing, and that's
Even
why it makes him one of the best vocalists in death metal.
even
So
on the Die Kingdom Come demo, David Vincent sounds fucking evil on that
Yeah.
one too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, so
Pete
you're replacing vocals, Dave Vincent's vocals and Pete Sandoval's drums with one guy. One guy's gonna replace both of them. So yeah, there's no way. But some people, I never heard anybody prefer the Abominations thing, but people do like it, of course. Like Ovi loves it.
Yeah, because it was recorded in '86, so it's kind of like it's in the birth period there with the rest, so it's kind of cool. I don't know
Yeah.
why it wasn't released back in '86.
Back then, none of those bands were getting record labels. It was a miracle that Death got contacted by Combat. Like they couldn't believe it themselves. They weren't
All
even
right.
like a band that was out there playing all the time. They didn't have like this word of mouth. It was just like they heard that all these demos that they were doing, and they just knew it was something different. But no death metal bands were getting, like, we had this band Primeval in New York, and they were opening up for Death, and every band that came through, and they were like kind of had such a big following that they kind of had a better reaction than the headliners all the time. They could not get signed to like a good label back then because there was only a handful of labels out there. In the 80s, you got to remember there was only a handful of metal labels in each country or whatever. You get to the point now where there's a million fucking labels, and if you don't get signed, you just put it out yourself. It wasn't like that back then. You couldn't just go record. The record stuff would cost so much money. Everything was different. Now every band has a guy in the band that can do it on Pro Tools now, pretty much, at least make a good demo and stuff. It's just a totally different world from back then. It was really hard, especially for extreme metal bands. It wasn't until pretty much like Leprosy comes out, and then all of a sudden you're starting to see all these bands that were great demo bands. All of a sudden, certain ones, Suffocation gets their first album out, then Gorguts is getting their album out over here, and Pestilence over here. Like all these bands are all around the world are starting to put out their first albums, but it really needed an album like Leprosy for people to really start catching on, and so once it get going, then it was easier. But yeah, when something like the earlier you look back at Abominations or something like that, there was nobody looking to put out stuff like that. There was total noise to people. Like even
Mhm.
someone like me, when I as a metalhead that was loving Slayer and Metallica and stuff like that, like I remember every step. Like it took me a minute to fucking understand what was going on. When I first heard Morbid Angel, I was just like, "What the fuck?" Like I was already a Death fan, and Morbid Angel, I just couldn't understand the first listen. It took a few listens. Once it clicks, all of a sudden you hear everything clear. It's like, why couldn't I hear it like that before? But it's like that with so many bands back then. When I was a kid, the first time I heard Venom, it was like that. I needed to hear like the slower song to hear like what's going on, and then I got more into the whole craziness of it all. And it's weird how, like, to me, to see like little kids walking around with like Cannibal Corpse shirts and stuff, because I'm thinking, what were they listening to before that? Like I needed stuff to
Mhm.
lead up to this extremity, like I don't see how you could be 12 years old listening to Cannibal Corpse. What were you listening to Slayer when you were 8 years old? And then it's like it's just a weird kind of thing to me, but I don't know. That's how it is for me.
Well, it's interesting thing that Miles said about Mark Browning's drumming, because Nocturnus the key, it's a milestone if you ask me. But if you listen to Nocturnus demo from '87, it's such a different band. It's like it's so hard to understand that it's the same.
Hey, but look, I like Browning. I'm not saying nothing bad about
No,
him,
no,
but
no. I love Browning. I think
his
he's
drumming
fantastic.
on the key is it gets sloppy. I'm not. I'm just gonna say it. I love the key. I love it, but his drumming on it is very sloppy. Now, the newest record, the one that I wasn't a fan of his vocal delivery on it. He's amazing drum wise on that record. So you can see how Browning like progressed during the years, but his drumming on the key is it's sloppy at times.
When that album came out, I seen him on that tour and Nocturnus. I forget if they were opening for Death or were they opening for Sepultura or say I seen him in Long Island at this place. And I know I seen Sepultura early on. I seen Carcass and Napalm Death there, but I forget which exact tour. I think maybe it was Napalm Death and Carcass had Nocturnus on it. But I did see him back then, and I just remember me and all my friends, none of us cared that Nocturnus was playing. Like we were there for whoever would one of those headliners. It was like Sepultura and Sadis and Obituary. Oh, no, it was Obituary and Sadis, I believe. But it was like there was like all these tours that came through there. And I remember the night that Nocturnus was on the bill, like none of us cared, you know. And I had the CD and stuff, and even then, like the little bit of keyboards back then was like, oh, we hate this
Yeah.
stuff. It was so funny, like how like closed-minded we were with that early versions of death metal, and they were a band that was being original and unique by having keyboards and doing something a little different. You know, I got to go back to that album. I know some people really love it and stuff, but I just remember at the
Was it
time,
in
like
'89? You saw them, you said?
I don't know what year it was, but it was around that time was when I was going to the Sundance in Long Island, and I seen Death and um Suffocation there and Winter, and I seen a whole bunch of it. I seen Dark Angel there. I went to a
Because
lot of different shows.
Nocturnus opened for Obituary and they opened for Brutality.
So the Obituary tour was probably it was Sadis, probably Nocturnus, and Obituary, and Sadis at the time had Steve DiGiorgio. That was his main band. So
Yeah.
that was really cool. I got to see him in when he was in his original band with Sadis. Always like he was always kind of like a guy that was jumping in. Like he helps out on the first Autopsy album, but he's not like even credited on. Like he's not in the pictures for the first Autopsy album.
That's
Steve
right.
DiGiorgio, yeah, he's jumping around, and later on he starts really people really start to realize how important of a bass player that guy is, and even like that stuff he did with Chris Cafferty, where he's doing like traditional metal, the spirits of fire and stuff. It's like that
Yeah.
guy can just do anything. Like that guy is one of the
Good.
greatest. Like you put him in a band, and he's gonna shine no matter what band it is.
If you
Yeah,
saw
Vincent.
Nocturnus in early '91, it's kind of interesting because then you saw them with Napalm Death and Godflesh.
That's the one because I can picture the flyer now. It was Napalm Death and Godflesh, and I told you
Yeah,
the
it's
story
at
before.
Lamore's.
It's God.
It's right across the floor.
Well, I seen him at Sundance probably the same weekend, and because I was Long Island and Brooklyn, it's like pretty far apart from each other. But so they would have played the next night in Long Island. But for whatever reason, we went to
Godflesh
that one.
opens, then Nocturnus comes, and then Napalm Death at the end. That must be such a weird.
Well, the thing that sucked was Godflesh. I told you the story. It was my only time seeing
Yeah, yeah.
Godflesh, and I went to the show, and we Godflesh was doing a sound check, and one of my friends went in and just watched the soundtrack, and I was like, yeah, why am I going to go in and watch the soundtrack? I could smoke weed out here and drink an extra beer before I got to be stuck inside the club, and because I think it was like once you were in, that was it. You couldn't go back out. So I was like, I'll skip the sound check. I'm not going in for that. And then during that sound check, Godflesh erased their drum tape. So they had no
Yeah.
drummer. It was only two guys that went up there. And then Mick Harris had to come out and say, "Oh, that's what happens when you don't have a drummer. They fucking erased the tape and they can't play tonight." We were just like, "Oh, what the fuck?" But Nocturnus, it was, and I think maybe Brutal Truth was on that bill too. I think they might have added somebody else on that bill, but
Well, because the
yeah,
fun part is was Justin and the bass player Godflesh is basically Napalm Death. So Mick Harris could just have stepped in because they know each other so well.
yeah, right. They could have fucking did something, and it was
Yeah,
just
they
like,
could
nope,
have.
they're done. And I don't know if it affected other shows on tour for them before they can get another tape of like the drums that they erased. But how did they not have a backup back then? But that was just like you know, it was before computers, so it was like you didn't have your backed up versions of it. You know, they had probably one cassette or whatever. I don't know what the fuck they
Mhm.
played to have drums playing, but they didn't have it. And they erased it, and they sounded good from outside from the sound check, but we didn't get to see them because they fucking someone hit erase on it or whatever.
Yeah.
All right. So finally, my number one Death album is going to be Sound of Perseverance.
Nice.
Yeah, I really just I keep going back to this one all the time. It's to me it's like a power metal slash death album. And I love that, man. I love the melodic shit. I love the catchy choruses and all that going on. Scavenger of Human Sorrow was so good. Bite the Pain is fantastic. Spirit Crusher, the flesh and the power it holds. Such a good song. I really love Voice of the Soul. I love that cool
Mhm.
acoustic interlude.
Oh
So
yeah,
good.
yeah, that's
So
great.
goddamn good, man. And this is another album where I love the lyrics, where it looks at how human beings can be just such pieces of shit. And it just, goes into that whole thing about how humans can just be garbage. And it's just Chuck saw it, man, and he didn't hold anything back. I love it. I love it so much, especially lyrically, but musically too. Just a fantastic album, man. Fantastic, fantastic melodic death metal album. And again, another thing where I love that Chuck took the boundaries of death metal and just stretched it out and said, I'm going to do this. And death metal is going to be this now. And after
Yep.
that album is, so much melodic death metal started to show up, and started to become a thing. It like became a scene and it became a genre. And he did that all throughout his career with death, like with Human. That was a tech death album, and that became a big thing. That became a big subgenre, tech death. And Humans really kind of the beginning of that. And, the mellow death subgenre of death metal, it's with Individual Thought Patterns and Symbolic and Sound of Perseverance. Chuck really kind of forged that path for that stuff. And he really was kind of a dude that was a pioneer. you know Whether you like it or not, there was a lot of dudes that didn't like what he did. There's a lot of dudes that still don't like what he did, but he was the guy that kind of like said, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna make that left turn. I'm gonna make this right turn. Death metal doesn't have to just be this one thing. It can be lots of different things. And Chuck was the guy that stretched the genre out into different things, and that's why I love him.
And
I
you
could
wouldn't think
say
the
that
guy that
Santa
was
Perseverance
considered
is
like
just
the
that.
Godfather, you wouldn't think the guy who was considered the Godfather of it would want to stretch it so much. Or you think, okay, I started something. People are saying I'm the Godfather. Why would you abandon it in any way? You figure you're okay. You started a whole genre, so you want to go full in. But it's the same thing with Quathron from Bathory. He starts
Mhm.
what really, I mean, Venom is the black has the song and album called Black Metal, but Quathron and Bathory, they really kind of define the sound of what black metal becomes. But then before it even starts to really take on and a million bands start following that sound, he's already doing like a Viking metal thing. Like he's like, no,
Yes.
let's start a new. Let's see if I could do it again with another whole genre. So that's pretty amazing. You know, some bands, you know, like Cannibal Corpse, they got their niche and they're successful with it, so they're gonna just stay in that lane and do it the best they can, and it's awesome. But it's kind of brave to be like considered such a important person in a scene and then kind of abandoning it to go and expand it or move it on to the next things.
I think though that Son of Perseverance is probably Chuck's best vocal performance, as in range. He shows so many different vocals on Son of
Yeah.
Perseverance. I think it's his best vocal
It's his
performance.
most different. It's his most different vocal performance. Like all the other times, he kind of sounds more the same. And then something about
Mhm.
that album, it's like it's never really deep, but it's kind of like the most vicious sounding. Like even the
Yes.
whole album has like a vicious sound. It's not as brutal as the earlier stuff, but it's got like a viciousness that might even be more vicious than. And it's fucking awesome. He's never
It's like
every
fucking
album he
nuclear
sings
blast.
great on.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I've kind of heard he did that high vocal stuff to be a lot different than what a lot of death metal was being at the time. You know, more higher vocal range on it.
Like
Mhm.
scratchy. It's like a scratchy though.
Yeah, and it
It's not.
does sound vicious. It
Yeah.
That's why I don't like. I see people put down Sound of Perseverance. I was like, fucking Chuck singing high. That ain't fucking death metal vocals. Like,
Yeah.
dude, but it sounds fucking vicious. You know, it
Yeah.
sounds like it fits. It fits the record.
Yes.
I remember. I remember before I really got into like knowing stuff about death. I heard Sound of Perseverance, and I'm like, is that Chuck even on vocals? And it's Chuck on vocals, but it fits the record. It
Yeah.
does.
Because
Yeah, no
basically that
doubt.
whole record is made in '96, but it doesn't come out until '98, so it just stays on the shelf for over a year.
The one thing
Or-
about Chuck that I like, all right, if you watch the documentaries, everybody knows like, oh, he was hard to work with, you know. I think Chuck had a vision and he knew the vision, what each record he wanted from it. And if he didn't get it, it was either his way or the highway, which it's his band. But the thing about Chuck is he always got top-notch guys to play
Yeah.
on his like he
Every
got like the best drum performance on any of the Death records, in my opinion, is Sean Reinert's on fucking Human. Sean Reinert
Yeah.
is absolutely going nuts on that record. It is.
Yeah.
He's fucking going absolutely crazy on that record. And Gene
and
Hoglan,
with
even
Paul on there,
Paul
Paul on there
Mazadov
too
on
with them.
there.
Like, yeah, it's Cynic with Steve DiGiorgio and Chuck.
And Chuck
basically.
and Gene Hoglan himself said my favorite drum performance on a Death record is Sean Reinert's on Human, and he said he was nervous when he played on Individual Thought Patterns because he had to follow that up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And he's fucking Gene Hoglan.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's funny too with Individual Patterns because both Gene and the guitar player, they come straight from thrash metal bands. They have never played death metal before.
Yeah, but
Steve DiGiorgio came from thrash. It's their first death metal album, both of those guys. And
yeah, but
the
if
other
you
guy-
listen to
Well,
Dark,
Sadist was one of those bands that were on the line. They were heavy enough to be considered death metal. If you had a little bit more of a death metal vocal, it's
Mhm.
Sadist. Some people might even consider Sadist death metal. I mean, that's how on the line. And so that was his band for a long time. And and he was also in Autopsy. He plays on Severed Survival, but he's not credited because he wasn't part of the band. But so he's already recorded that before he's in Death too. So Steve DiGiorgio.
Just the last
is
thing about
definitely-
Chuck. He played guitar on a '95 album, on an album called Voodoo Cult something.
yeah, and he played on the Slaughter record too.
No, he didn't play on
Because
Slaughter.
he plays guitar
He
on the
went
whole
up. He went
album
up.
in
He went up to
95.
Canada. He went
He
up to
wasn't on-
Canada and he hung out with them for a while, but it didn't work out. He didn't last like even a month up there.
He wasn't
But
on He wasn't
No,
on that record?
He loves Slaughter, and he tried to go up there, but basically he went up there and it just didn't work out, and he was back home within a month, you know. But it's all in the one book that I read. But the next book that's out right now probably go more into detail about it. But yeah, if Chuck was on that Slaughter albums, like those albums are, I love the Strapato album
Oh,
by
but he
Slaughter.
plays
I have it
he
on
plays an
vinyl.
album called Voodoo Cult, called Jesus Killing Machine from '95. He plays all the guitar, but he hasn't written anything on it. It's from '95. He plays all the guitars.
I don't even know about that. I don't know. I don't remember that
It,
in the book or
it's a
anything.
trash metal. It's a trash metal album. Voodoo Cult, and the album is called Jesus Killing Machine.
But if
So
you
that's what
listen,
you'll find out.
Slaughter is one of those bands that are also before
yeah,
Death's album. So they're another one of those kind of like are
that
they
was
Death,
before.
but they're not really defined as a death metal band either, because
Th-
they're really heavy, but and they got this weird chunky kind of sound. But man, if Chuck would have been in that band, they would have been like so incredible, because I love that album. It's such a great album.
Yeah,
But
that
what it's
album's great.
lacking is like it's kind of got they reused the same riffs over and over on that album. If you throw Chuck in there and start throwing like insane solos and stuff over that could have been incredible. But he didn't stick around with them long enough. He was a fan of them. He went up there and they were totally ready to work with him and stuff, but it just wasn't working out. And there's no money for him to stay up there, and they weren't gigging all the time and stuff. So he just went right back to Florida.
Well,
But
this is all this is
Gene
all
coming from a
interesting.
thrash band, I mean, if you listen to him on Darkness Ascends, I mean, god damn, his fucking drumming on that Dark Angel record is absolutely brutal.
And they did the major tour together that I first
Yeah, they
seen Death
did.
on.
And
It was
Chuck
Death
got
and Dark Angel was the first time I seen them. And that's the Ultimate Revenge too. So they got to know each other then, but they actually had problems on tour with
yeah, Chuck was
Death and
pissed.
Dark Angel. Yeah, Death and
Yeah,
Dark Angel didn't really get along, but somehow Gene ends up playing with him.
Chuck was pissed because he said they were co-billed, but they wasn't co-headlining because Dark Angel was co-headlining, and he was pissed off about that.
It made sense because Dark Angel was around longer. We were big Dark
Longer
Angel
than
fans
Death. Yeah.
before we were big Dark Angel fans before we heard Death, so to me it makes sense.
But Chuck also had that problem later on where he had the thing with the European tours where he was always canceling and shit like
Yeah,
that with that.
yeah. He get homesick. He didn't like touring. You know, he liked
He
being
did
on
a
stage,
tour in
but
'93.
he didn't like the touring part of it.
Yeah, he didn't like going to Europe, and he'd find every reason not to if he'd make it to Europe. Like Death even went to Europe without Chuck. Forget
Yeah.
what tour. Was it Spiritual Healing?
Well, yeah, that's what broke up the
Yeah, it
band.
was
Well,
Yeah.
spiritual healing.
That's what broke up that lineup.
that was the Leprosy lineup that got broken up, I believe. Is when
Yeah,
they went to
it was
Europe
Rick
without him.
Tolo,
They were supposed to open up. They were
DKY.
supposed to open for Creator. It was like Creator headlining,
Yeah.
and the whole tour was booked. And it's like everybody went over, and Chuck didn't make it, and said he wasn't doing it. And they were already over there, and so they were like, "Fuck it, we'll just keep going." And then Chuck thought it was the most disrespectful thing, them playing his music and everything, but he totally fucked that all up. Chuck was like kind of weird when you read like the book on all that stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing how they interpret it in this other book, because I think this other book is more sanctioned by his family and stuff, so it's going to be more pro Chuck. I think sometimes it's good when an outsider comes in and writes a book, that has no skin in the game or whatever. It's like they give you the facts of what happened, and from what I was reading in the one book, like Chuck kind of just like dicked out, and he was known to do that kind of thing, and it's like, once you get your bad reputation for pulling out of shows and stuff, then no one wants to book you and stuff. But when those guys came back from that tour in Europe, that was it. They were
Yeah,
all
he was
fired.
done.
He
That
had
was a
not one of them lasted to the next album.
I know in the documentary, the reason why the Symbolic lineup kind of fell apart was because they played that one show. Uh, who was the band they were touring with? and the guitar player and Gene went up there and played like Zombie
Was
Ritual.
it the Canada part of the tour or the Japanese part of the tour?
No, it was like, yeah, I think
Yeah,
it
that
was,
was like the start of it. It was the start of it. They went at like he canceled the show, so they went up on stage with another band and they just did like 2 songs or something like
yeah, and
that.
it
And then
and he
he
said they
blew
had
up
like
on that.
5 people in the crowd. There was nobody there. You didn't think it was a
Yeah,
big
they
deal,
didn't
but
think it was even gonna. They didn't even think he would get back to Chuck.
yeah,
Then
and
it
then
didn't even
Chuck heard
happen.
about it and he was fucking
Flipped
pissed.
out. Yeah,
Yeah, and then that
he's
kind of broke
very.
broke that up.
That was his baby. That was like his baby, and it's like you couldn't
Yeah.
fuck with his creation and stuff like that. And you kind of get that. That makes sense, but at the same time, he could have been cool and just been like, don't do that shit again or something, instead of being like, that's it, you're all fucking dead to me kind of thing. He burned bridges everywhere he went with bands, and that's why every album had somebody different. It was
Yeah,
never
that's
the same lineup. I don't think there's not one album here that has the same lineup.
No.
So
no.
that tells you right
None.
there, Chuck was a genius and everything, but he was difficult and he wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't he was a flawed individual. But I
In
hate
Europe, in Europe '95 they toured with Benediction.
that was it. It was with Benediction. Yep, it was with Benediction.
Yeah.
And I also hate the rumors that come out about Chuck, about like, stuff about, his personal life. I'm not really gonna get into it, but
His
like,
sexuality.
yeah, I mean, who gives a good fuck?
Yeah.
Wait,
Who
what are you talking about though? I don't know what you're talking about. He was
So
like
there's
engaged.
rumor.
There's
I've
been
heard.
rumors. Yeah, there's been rumors for years, as long as I've known anyway, about Chuck's sexuality.
No,
About
I don't
that
know what
he
you
might.
guys are talking about.
I don't
Yeah,
either.
In those
I'm
lyrics,
surprised you never heard that.
no, there's lyrics. I think you guys are getting this from the one song where it's I
That's
forget
where
the song.
a
You
lot
guys
of
are
it.
getting it.
That's
You
from
know
the
what that's from?
philosopher.
Yeah, but you know what that's about though, right? That's about the guys from Cynic.
Yeah,
The
from
two guys
Cynic.
from
Yeah,
Cynic were gay. The drummer, Sean
Yes.
yeah.
Reiner,
Sean
and Paul
Reinert and
Masvidal
Paul
Yeah.
were gay.
Masvidal.
So he wrote a
Yeah.
song like about it, but Chuck was never had rumors about. I've been a fan from the beginning. There was never. I don't remember there was ever any kind of rumors about him being gay. He was he was engaged for years, and his wife,
Yeah, he
his
was.
wife to be,
Yeah.
like talking about how insane, how sad it was that she couldn't even go to his funeral because she couldn't get the day off because they
But
weren't officially
Yes.
married and all that
I-
stuff. But
Yeah.
I've never heard that any kind of rumors back in the
I've
day.
seen that rumor. I've seen that rumor before, and I've also seen a rumor that I don't even
Yeah.
like to bring up. I've seen a rumor float around the internet where Chuck didn't really die from like his brain tumor or whatever. He died of another disease that I don't want to even, because it's
That's
all
totally.
bullshit. It's all
I never
bullshit.
heard. I just never even. No, but it's weird that I never heard this, and I
But it's so
followed
fucking
I read every book.
stupid. It's so stupid, and I call everybody out for whenever I see stuff like that on the internet, like in these groups or whatever. Like, who gives a good fuck? Who cares?
But it's weird that I've just never heard of that, or just never was a thing ever. And
Also,
I
that
remember
in
hearing
the
about the
US.
Cynic guys.
The Cynic guys,
Huh?
yeah, but it's like,
I
Right.
seen Cynic playing in Middletown. They did this underground tour. They played in Middletown with Primeval and Malevolent Creation. And
Wow.
they were just fucking phenomenal. We didn't know what we were seeing with Cynic. I bought the demo from them that day. And it was way before their album came out, before he was in death and stuff. And they just blew people's mind. They were doing this like technical thrash thing that
awesome. They're
I remember the guys from
amazing.
Primeval were like, "Oh my god, we got to play good tonight because we're playing with this fucking thing." And they couldn't believe they were like headlining over them because they were like the hometown heroes. So then they watched Cynic playing. They were like, "Oh my god, who the fuck is this band?" And they were just phenomenal. And that's one of those bands. It's kind of funny because there's not many bands I could say that, but I loved the demo. And then when the album came out, it
Focus.
was like so overproduced and like so much different than what I remember from the demo, because the demo was more raw and straightforward and stuff. So that's kind of one of those few bands that at that point I was making earlier.
I'm that way with Nocturnus. I like the demo. I actually like the Science of Evil more than the Key. Even though I really do like the Key, I like the demo a little bit better. It's a lot more raw. That's what I like about demos. Even the Death demos with even with Cam Lee on vocals too, on some of those early Manus and shit.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
what the
like,
whole thing is. They're not in a real studio. They're in like
yeah, it's not in a real.
whatever
It's just
studio is in their bumfuck town that they can
it's
get in,
just
you know?
like it's more passion because it's just like this. It's like they're not really getting no money for this. They're not trying to impress nobody. They're just doing what they fucking getting out what they feel like. That's why I love.
And no one knew how to capture death metal sound because
Nope.
it was a new sound. So it wasn't like you could bring a tape in and say, I want to sound like this, and like let the producer work from that. Back then, they just didn't know what the fuck they were doing. And it wasn't until years later that you got some good productions that you can go in there with your Carcass tape and say, I want to sound like this band Carcass here
Hmm.
on this album, or
Yeah, or
you
you
know.
go in with
So it wasn't.
your suffocation tape and you're like, I want to sound like
Yeah.
this.
Well, that's what every band
So
did. And then with Morris Sound, a lot of bands were saying we want to sound like that last album you guys put out. So they were going to Morris Sound, and the same thing in Sweden and in Norway. They all
Sunlight
started going to the same
Studios.
studio. Yeah, they all started going to the same studio because they kind of understood what was going on with sound. But so many bands had recorded their early stuff in the studio that they had no idea what kind of music this was. They just said, okay, record and just let it all be noise. They didn't care. They just wanted to get paid.
So they toured back in the US. They toured on the 95 tour. They toured with Nevermore. And for some reason that did end, but they also toured with Gorguts and a band called Homicide.
Well, I went to the Never. This shirt right here that I'm wearing was from when they played in Middletown with Nevermore.
Okay. What about the
Nice.
band Homicide?
I don't know who they are. I don't remember them.
Okay.
I
That
I
was
didn't
on the
see him.
Canada part of the
I
tour.
didn't see him with Gorguts. I seen Gorguts a couple
That was
times early
Canada. The
on.
Canada leg was with Gorguts.
Yeah, probably Canada. That's where they're from.
What about Barf with the like dots between it?
Yeah, I think they were like some kind of hardcore or crossover type of thing. I think, but I kind of remember like the name and stuff, but don't have anything by him.
Another cool thing is watching Chuck do the high vocals and he sings the older Death songs, like around the Sound of Perseverance
Yeah.
tours. And
The
he
live
does
and raw.
yeah, and he does like he sings like Pull the Plug with the high vocals from Sound of Perseverance. I love watching that shit because it's like a different take on it.
Yep.
Yeah, my last two times seeing him, like I see him with Nevermore, high
Mhm.
vocal, like God, the guy World Dane, like that guy. He could do
Loomis.
King Diamond if he wanted. He could do anything. And then I see him with Hammerfall the final time I see him. So that's another like power metal. Like you could totally see like he's already got control denied like in his brain where he wants to kind of go into that world more. And so he has Death is playing shows with Nevermore and Hammerfall, like the final tours that I get to see him on. So
Yeah.
it shows what he was kind of like, what direction. But he always had his foot in like the old traditional metal. He would always wear classical shirt. And what's the cool thing is you can find lots of pictures, mainly of Terry Butler wearing Rock Fantasy
Rock
shirts. But
Fantasy shirts,
there,
yep.
there's a video of
Yeah.
Chuck freaking out on somebody in the audience, and he's screaming and he's fucking really like pissed off about something. I haven't watched it in a long time, but he's wearing a Rock Fantasy shirt. And
Yeah,
it's
I
because
seen that.
of the band Primeval that used to open for them, and Chuck liked Primeval. So when they came to New York, Primeval would open for them. And the bass player Mary, she hooked them up. I believe she hooked them up with some Rock Fantasy shirts. And then those guys end up wearing, like you see, even in that episode on Into the Void, if you pay attention, there's a part where they show a picture of the band from the Leprosy lineup, and Terry Butler's wearing a Rock Fantasy shirt. He's got like a jacket, a
Yeah.
vest or something over it, but you see the Rock Fantasy symbol.
Yep.
So kind of cool.
Yeah, it's fucking dope.
At the beginning of Symbolic Tour, they were actually in Europe, and this was the lineup though. Started with Hate Squad, then you got Gorefest, Grave from Sweden, Unleashed, and then Death.
The killer.
That I would like to see that.
Yeah.
Well, just Grave, Unleashed, and Death. I got a bunch of Gorefest stuff. I got it for free when
Warfest
I
is
was working.
okay.
Yeah, I didn't really get into them. They were kind of like a weak kind of version for what I was into at the time. I should go back to it and give it another listen because some people liked it in Europe and stuff. But yeah, they were one of those bands I just never really got hooked on or nothing, even though I have a bunch of their CDs.
And Chuck wearing the cat shirt in that interview.
Yeah.
I remember
Love
him
it.
getting shit for that more than than
Yeah.
any kind of gay rumors or anything like that. I remember people didn't like that he was wearing like a cat shirt, but he loved animals. He was a dog lover.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's like he didn't
He was a big
fall in
family
line.
person too.
He
Yep.
wasn't like a Glenn Benton. People, when you got really into death metal and you're a teenager and stuff, you want like the death metal like Glenn Benton. You want a fucking branded fucking upside down cross on your head, You to you like that would be the true fucking death metal. So I think Chuck kind of disappointed people as far as not living up to that. But most sensible people, they didn't really want that. They wanted just like good music. That's what they fucking wanted. But
Yeah.
I kind of fall into place with the fucking upside down cross burned in the head. Like I liked the more dangerous shit when I was a kid. I didn't like it
Yeah.
when things got so technical and stuff like that. At first, I didn't like love it, and there was a lot of brutal death metal bands out at the time that kind of like surpassed death for me for a while. But then going back and seeing these tours, and I got to see Death like 5 times. So like, I got to see him throughout the different tours and stuff, and I just got to appreciate it more. But I remember at the time, like even by the time Human came out, like I was so much more into like the Autopsy kind of sound, and keeping it more basic, and they're another band that kind of stuck with their like what they started out with, and they might have got a little slicker productions here and there, but it was like they basically stayed in that realm, and they still do to this day. Actually, they didn't really change it up much. And that's commendable. That they for bands to do that, and it's also commendable for bands to change. And as long as they keep it still like metal and sort of in the realm, I don't have a problem with it. It's when you totally abandoning it, like Celtic Frost did with Cold Lake, or even Judas
Cold
Priest
shit.
with Turbo and stuff at the time. That was too far over the line. You're now you're not just experimenting, you're abandoning us. And I didn't like that.
Yeah.
But Death, I never felt
I
like
look
Death
through
did that.
95
I know.
now, and I look through whole 93, and Death did tour with Gorefest, whole the European of 95, and the whole the European of 93. They did Gorefest. So Gorefest, I've been playing with Death
Probably
for a
had
long
something to do
time.
with the label. What was
Yeah.
yeah, because I think what was that, Nuclear Blast maybe at the time? I don't remember
Yeah.
what Gorefest was on, but yeah, I think
Yeah,
it maybe Nuclear
probably. Yeah.
Death was. It's probably a label thing because that would happen all the time with you know unless you were like a big band, you could choose who you want to. Like later in the game, he chose Nevermore. He chose Hammerfall. Like
Oh
he
yeah.
had more of a say at that point. But I don't think early on it
Yeah,
was
because
basically
Control Denied, he got a power metal singer to basically
yeah.
sing for that band.
That's where his heart was at that point.
And
Yeah.
I always respect, and like everybody been saying, like I always respected Chuck for like pushing the boundaries, wanting to do something different. I mean, you already did Scream Bloody Gore and Leprosy. Nobody can take that away from you. What we're gonna, and like you said, he pushed it, he went like, all right, this technical stuff is getting big now. I want to try that. And then he went into that, and then he liked power metal toward the end. He wanted to do Control Denied, and make more like a power metal record. So, doing what he wanted to do, and the lineup changes are what they are. He had it was his way or the highway. It was his road to take. If you wanted to
Oh,
ride the bus, you could hop on, or you get the fuck out, I guess.
a lot had to do with the scene too. It's like,
Yeah.
so you got like all these bands like kind of copying Scream Bloody Gore and copying just death metal. Like, when death metal, the first wave of everything is always best. Like the first wave of thrash, every singer sounded different. When you look at the first wave of death metal, every singer sounded different. If you pick those first 20 bands that you say are the first 20 death metal bands that had albums out, they all sound a little different. At one point, everybody starts sounding the same, and Death is a band that's like supposedly like the leader of it, but now that they're immersed in it, and it's like at one point he just like starts reverting backwards to his roots, and it took me just as a fan listener, I got to like basically from when Scream Bloody Gore comes out till fucking like the year 2000. I don't listen to anything but like extreme metal. I mean, I listened to a little bit of like the industrial stuff when it got
Mhm.
kind of exciting, when it was new and it was heavy, and a couple of like being evil or fucked up and stuff. Like I like crazy stuff I liked for a long time, but there wasn't many, like it wasn't like a big scene and stuff. But by the year 2000, I start going backwards. Chuck starts going backwards a lot earlier because he's way more immersed in the whole death metal thing. He's there from way before I even knew what death metal was, and he's like, he gets to a point like of going backwards way before a lot of the fans do, because he's living this life for a long time now at this point. So for just like a fan perspective, like I remember like around 2000, I still love death metal. I still love, even today, 25 years since then, I still love death metal, and I like keeping up with all of my favorite death metal bands. But I'm not constantly hunting for every new band that comes out. There's a fucking million of them. There's a million labels. There's no way of keeping up. If a band makes enough noise, it's gonna come on my radar sooner or later. But I there's like this one guy, he does a death metal podcast YouTube show. He plays like 3 hours of death metal, and I get to sit there for 3 hours and like everything that I'm hearing and never have heard of any of these bands he's playing. He just plays one band after another, and it's 3 hours of killer fucking music. I like it all, but I'm not going to run out and try to buy all this stuff. It's just
Yeah.
too much. It's too many. So at one point he goes backward, and that's what I did around 2000. I started going backwards and appreciating all the stuff that I missed, that I should have liked, but because extreme metal fucked me up so much that I totally fucking missed like a whole over a decade. I missed the whole 90s. Like all these guys that like Alice in Chains and Soundgarden and Nirvana, I totally fucking missed that. I Tupac and all fucking, I'd say Cloud Posse, all that shit. I was such an underground death metal grindcore. The fucking most insane stuff there could be is all I cared about. So I totally missed that whole decade of the 90s. Even like Pantera, like it was just like, yeah, who cares about that? I was listening to fucking Funeral Rape and fucking prostitute disfigurement and shit like that.
I think it's interesting what James said about death and their different genres and stuff. And I know me and Ralph have talked about this because we have a little different views on things, which I think is perfect. Because for me, the technical death, they came with Atheist with Piece of Time, because
Yeah,
everybody heard that album live
yeah.
back in '88 before Chuck went technical the year after. So I believe
But
for
that was
me,
more straightforward. That album was way more straightforward than the second album, though. The second album, Unquestionable Presence, that's where they really, you hear those breakdown bass parts, like the fucking weird jazzy bass. Actually, the best bass player was the Patterson guy from the first album. He dies in like a same way, like a fucking Cliff Burton and shit, like some crazy
yeah, yeah.
car accident. But they get this other insane bass player in there, and then that second album, it's like all these jazz parts. So I think they almost go too overboard with the
Yeah, they
technical
did.
thing.
That's why I like the first
On the
album
second
best.
album, yeah, so the first album is amazing to me, and I listen to that second album now. I'm like, wow, these guys were so fucking ahead of their time. But that's way before fucking even that second album is before. I don't know. I should look at the dates before I say it. But to me,
Yeah,
in my
because the
head,
first
that if
album,
Question
had
Presidents
that
was even
record label
before
got
Humans.
gone like bonkers, the album would have been out in '88. But since that the label went like broke, the album didn't come out until 1990. But if Piece of Time had come out in '88, that would be something special. Also, when
And
James talked
and
about
they're a Florida
melodic,
band. Yeah,
Yeah,
and they're a Florida
Atheist is a
band. They're all
Florida
hanging
band.
out. They're all hanging out. They all Chuck definitely was aware of what Atheist was doing and stuff,
yeah,
and
that's what I was
he was
thinking.
a fan. Yeah,
Yeah, that first
and
Atheist
his
record's
others
my
too.
favorite.
And James
They're
also talked
yeah,
about
that
melodic death metal, and for me, the first melodic death metal is actually Carcass with Necrotism from '91. That's my first like dip into melodic because that album, the third Carcass album, has a lot of melody in it.
Oh yeah.
even
Yeah,
even the
definitely.
third Death album, Spiritual Healing, has melody though. That
Yeah,
James Murphy
Yeah.
kind of brings this new element in, but it's not like when you look back to it now, it sounds still way more brutal than what's considered melodic death
yeah,
metal
of
today.
course.
But when you
Yeah,
were a fan of the first two albums and then you got to that one, like I kind of remember, it wasn't like a backlash from Spiritual Healing, but it was definitely like, okay, Spiritual Healing's coming out, but so is Severed Survival, and we were just
yeah.
more of a Severed Survival kind of thing because like we're still like wanting to be more caveman and brutal and barbaric or whatever, and but I still appreciated Spiritual Healing, and I got to see him on tour, and it's fucking amazing. And you know, it's just when you look back at it, it's like then by the time Human came out, there was like so many great bands putting out their first album, the first Suffocations, the Ripping Corpse, and all these fucking just amazing albums all piling in. So you liked Human, but you didn't give it the time you would have gave the first three Death albums because now you got 50 fucking other death metal bands that you're listening to. So that's a hard thing to explain. Like when you're younger and you're going back, you're listening to it in a different way. You're not listening to it as like the progression of the way death metal was going and how many bands were putting out amazing stuff at the same time and everybody seemed original because it wasn't so flooded yet. Once it gets flooded, nothing's original. All of a sudden, like you can hear something like I say, that guy puts on this death metal podcast for 3 hours. Every song you'll listen to, you go, that's fucking killer. That's killer. That's killer. But every one you go, okay, it's killer, but it sounds like this band. And it's
Yeah.
killer, but it sounds like that band. And it's like it's all killer, but it's all kind of nothing standing out as original. It could be still fucking enjoyable stuff, but it's not very original because they're not doing anything different with it, you know. And I think that's why Chuck didn't want to be stagnant. He wanted to keep it moving, and he
Yeah.
could see all these bands like filling up and flooding the scene, and it's really what kind of killed it, you know. I mean, it never died, but you know, when people say like how grunge changed things in the '90s and killed metal and stuff, it didn't affect extreme metal. What affected extreme metal was 1,000 bands trying to do it all at the
Sounding the
same time.
same.
Yeah.
That's what fucking affected it. It was because it was thriving and there was always shows, there was always people that loved it and they were loyal to it, but there was just too much at one point, and it was like,
I
and I
think
mean,
also
even early in
you're
the
in a point
'90s,
here
we all got
because
into black metal. We all got into black metal because how many bands in '92 there already were so many death metal bands that we wanted to find the next extreme thing. Here's these black metal bands, and they're even more lo-fi and than the Scream Bloody Gore was, and so and like, and then they start progressing, and then they get more technical, and all of a sudden there's fucking 8 million black metal bands all sounding the
I think
same.
James was in on
Yeah.
something though, and you are in something too now because like Suffocation, Malevolent Creation, all those bands got screwed over by Roadrunner back in '93. So I think Chuck saw that and he didn't want to fall into that pit.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
Because he was on Roadrunner for Symbolic.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's
He
why
was
he
just
he got pissed off because he was on Roadrunner lumped him in with like 95. So that would be like Pierce from Within and
Suffocation.
yeah,
Yeah, immolation.
you know,
I think the thing more is that how young he was when Scream Bloody Gore songs came
yeah,
about. Like you're talking the demos before the fucking album. You're talking like a 16-year-old to like a 19-year-old or whatever. And then as years going on, he's getting better and better as a player. So yeah, he was like, this is the best he could do then. Now this is the best he could do. And he just
Right.
never stopped progressing. And it was the same thing with someone like Randy Rhoads. Like we didn't get to see his progression, but he wouldn't have lasted with Ozzy. He wanted to keep going more and more. He wanted to. He was taking guitar lessons like when he was on tour. Fucking the guitar god
Yeah.
Randy Rhoads is fucking taking guitar lessons on tour.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
the guy wanted to keep progressing and progressing, and but not every musician wants that. They some like their niche and they want to fucking make that everything. And but then some bands, like you see someone like the Celtic Frost, to me, they had the ultimate niche. They were this fucking dark. No one liked them. They were doing something so unique. And then all of a sudden he's like trying to look like LA Guns or something. It was like that's when it's horrible, is when it goes to jumping on a trend. But if you're gonna just try to be more original and keep progressing as a musician, then you gotta respect that.
yeah, and I think all the people that Chuck worked with, he just got more ideas because like Ovi alluded to, like he works with James Murphy on spiritual healing. He sees how good of a guitar player he is. He's like, all right, so my potential could be, I can push myself. And then you work with people like Paul Mazadov and you work with Sean Reinert, and you see
Mhm.
how technical and tight those guys are, and you're like, all right, I can be good, I can progress like that. And then you work with, Andy LaRock on individual thought patterns where that dude is fucking amazing, as well. And then, he's always progressing, but he's working with people that like push him. Because
Yeah.
Yeah.
if you watch the
Because
documentaries, they talk when Andy LaRock comes fucking in the studio to work with him, and he starts playing these complicated fucking chords and shit. And then he was like, all right, that was my warm up. And they were like, what? That was your
Mhm.
warm up. And then, just pushing them.
Yeah. Yeah, no
And also
doubt.
symbolic Bobby, he is a jazz guitar. He's a jazz guitar teacher, and jazz guitarists, they are something of their own.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, guys,
Yeah.
I gotta go. Um we've been fucking yammering and blabbering on about death for two and a
That's
half
the point. They're
hours.
gonna talk you to death, man.
Whew, whew, it's been a lot.
Yeah.
But this has been a fun episode, man. Miles, thank you for
Yeah.
coming back. It's been awesome to have you back on the Rock Fantasy Files.
Getting back on
Thank you to
track.
Ovi for joining us, and Ralph. I guess Ralph is probably going to take a piss or something. So we're just gonna have to say goodbye for him. Thank you for watching Rank and File Death. Please leave some comments on how you would rank the Death discography from 7 to 1. We would love to fucking see that. Welcome back, Ralph. We're gonna take off. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you.
Yeah, write in the comment
Um,
section if you have met Chuck, if you have talked with Chuck. Write in the comments if you've seen the shows. Share your stories about Chuck. This is all
yes,
for Chuck.
please. Absolutely. If you've seen Death live, I want to hear about that. I want to read your comments. So thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. Hit that like button, and we will see you soon for another episode of Rank and File. Thank you guys for joining us. Have a good night. See you soon from the Rock Fantasy Files. Come on, you cocksucker.
Still recording.
God damn it.